Over the past 100 years, science has started to bridge the gap between scientific and spiritual views of reality. This is most clearly seen in the connection between Buddhist teachings and the discoveries of quantum physics. Buddhism speaks of emptiness as the source from which everything comes and to which everything returns. According to Buddhism, everything you feel, see, hear, touch, think, or taste in this moment arises from the empty ground of infinite potential. We are going to explore what this emptiness is and how both the world and ourselves emerge from it, as explained by spiritual traditions and the findings of quantum physics. Two examples can help us understand. You may have a dream in which a gorilla is chasing you. Everything feels real and you are terrified. But in the morning you wake up happy and no longer afraid, knowing it was just a dream. You, the gorilla, and the dream world were all created by and returned to the consciousness of the dream. None of the dream was real, but the consciousness behind it was real in a way. It was the potential ground without which the dream could not appear. A blank piece of paper can also serve as an example. While the paper itself doesn't communicate anything, it holds infinite potential, because an endless variety of languages, ideas, and stories can be written on it. In this way, emptiness can be seen as an infinite field of potential, and in a sense more real than anything that arises from it. This idea of emptiness has some remarkable similarities to the quantum field in quantum physics. To understand these similarities, we first need to look into the nature of material reality. In quantum physics, we find that material exists in two forms, particles and waves. What's strange about the wave form, according to quantum physics, is that it has no definite location in time or space. In fact, the waveform is understood as being everywhere at once, spread throughout the entire universe. An example may help. Imagine you're holding an orange. In its particle form, the orange is locatable in time and space, but in its wave form, the orange is spread out in an infinite number of possible states across the entire universe. In one sense, the orange as a particle is a thing, but as a wave, it is pure potential. How can this be? How can something that seems to be in a specific place at a specific time also exist everywhere at once? In our usual understanding of reality, this seems impossible. However, scientists working in quantum physics have confirmed this particle-wave duality many times through an experiment known as the double-slit experiment. We will explore this experiment in more detail soon, but for now, it's important to know that its results were a huge shock to the scientific community. The most surprising discovery was this. The double-slit experiment showed not only that matter can exist as both particles and waves, but that whether it appears as a particle or a wave is influenced by human consciousness. How does this relate to emptiness? Atoms are known to be 99.999999999% empty space. Just taking in that fact forces us to rethink our understanding of reality, including our sense of self. But if reality is mostly empty space, why does it feel so solid, real, and grounded? If I'm mostly empty space, why do I feel so solid and real? Quantum physicists explain this feeling of solidity is caused by a still undefined repulsive force between atoms. This force is similar to how two magnets push away from each other when their like sides are placed together. So you never actually touch anything solid. Instead, it's this repulsive force that creates the illusion of solidity, making you feel as if you're touching something solid or that you yourself are solid. For example, when you sit in a chair, you're not truly touching the chair. Instead, the atoms in your body and the atoms in the chair are repelling each other, and it's this repulsion that you're feeling. In reality, you are always interacting with forms of energy. You never experience anything truly solid. It is this mysterious, repulsive force that gives you the illusion of experiencing something solid and real instead of emptiness. The particles that make up atoms arise from what quantum scientists call the quantum field. These particles are not separate from the field, but are part of it, just as waves are part of the ocean. The quantum field is beyond our direct perception, but holds the pure potential for all matter. Everything, including every atom, all matter, the universe, and ourselves, arises from this quantum field and returns to it. The field is spread across all space and time. Buddhism has a similar concept called dependent arising, which teaches that everything is interconnected. The belief that things exist independently of each other is an illusion. Everything depends on everything else for its appearance and seeming solidity. In the quantum field, when two particles start affecting each other in a certain way, they are said to be entangled. Here's where it gets even stranger. Once particles are entangled, whenever one of them changes, the other will reflect that change, no matter how far apart they are, even across the universe. You can think of it like this. Imagine you and a friend each hold a basketball, and those basketballs are entangled like particles. No matter how far apart you are, whether 2 meters or thousands of light years, any change to one basketball would instantly be mirrored by the other. Entangled particles behave as if they are one, even when they are separated by vast distances. It doesn't stop there. At the moment of the Big Bang, all matter in the universe was compressed into an infinitely small point. This means all particles in the universe are ultimately entangled. Quantum entanglement, then, points to a deep oneness in all existence. But where does human consciousness fit into all of this? In Buddhism and many other spiritual traditions, the mind is seen as the center of reality. The mind is not just part of reality. It creates what we experience as reality, much like how our mind creates dreams of scary gorillas and entire worlds while we sleep. From this perspective, the world is not something outside of us, but is created by our minds. This idea that reality is shaped by our minds is a core teaching of the Buddha. 2,500 years later, quantum physics arrives at a similar conclusion. Quantum physicist Werner Heisenberg was the first to realize that simply observing electrons affects their positions in time and space. He called this the uncertainty principle, and famously said, "What we are observing is not nature itself, but nature as it is affected by our observing mind." In other words, reality is shaped by the mind that is observing it. This doesn't undermine the scientific method. Instead, it highlights the dreamlike nature of the quantum particles that make up our universe. The effect of human consciousness on quantum particles becomes clear in the double-slit experiment. In this experiment, quantum particles are fired through 2 slits. When observed, the particles form a pattern and behave as particles. But when not observed, they form wave-like patterns. In other words, when we observe the particles, they appear as distinct finite points in space and time, as particles. But when not observed, they appear as infinite possibilities, not locatable in time or space, as waves. Whether we are Buddhists or quantum physicists, the conclusion is the same. Before the mind perceives reality, it exists only as infinite potential. Or, in Buddhist terms, without thought or mind, reality is seen as emptiness, pure potential. In conclusion, and to put it simply, the true nature of reality is emptiness or pure potential. The world we experience is a projection of our minds or human consciousness. This is how quantum physics and spiritual teachings understand the nature of reality.